Minions: The Rise of Gru. Let me start this off by saying that movie theater fans should be thankful for the lengths that the Minions went through for its release. During a freaky time when people had to stay at home and studios had to resort to bringing their features directly to them rather through digital releases or go straight to streaming, the Minions decided that they were going to wait. Even after all this time, they had faith that things would get better and that the best way to experience their feature is on the big screen. And they waited more than any other animated feature to do so. Heck, they waited longer than almost any other movie during that time for about 2 whole years. Seriously, the Minions, and to a certain extent Illumination, showed more dedication to movie theaters than both Pixar and Sony Animation. Of course, I'm not saying that you should like their movies now because of that devotion. But if you're someone who loves the big screen experience, then at least show some gratitude that these guys care about the movie theater business as much as you do. Anyways, originally meant to dedicate the 10th anniversary of the Despicable Me franchise, the Minions decided to go and expand on their spin-off prequel with a sequel. Yes, a sequel to the prequel. The Majora's Mask of Despicable Me, if you will. I've never been afraid to say that I'm a fan of the Despicable Me films, although I will say that the first Minions is probably the weakest so far. Not a bad movie for sure, and it does have its moments when it can be entertaining and funny, but I don't think the yellow guys carried their picture as well as Gru did with his trilogy. But who knows? Maybe this movie could change my mind on that. They got a second chance, and they even had years of extra time to make their grand return feel special. So now that we will witness Gru's rise to villainy with the Minions, will Gru and his team be so good at being bad? Or did the Minions wait way too long for their comeback? Let's find out. The story. I'll give it that the story does stay true to the Minion spirit, because the movie certainly felt like it was written by a Minion. I can say right now that this film is absolutely chaotic to the point that it's hard to say that it even has a story in the first place. I guess there is a resemblance of a main plot where a young Gru begins his pursuit to become a supervillain, but then gets kidnapped and the Minions go on a journey to rescue him. It's a little vague of a description, I know, but that's the best I can do to make sense of it as a whole. As crazy as it sounds, it doesn't even feel like there's a main story going on, but rather a whole bunch of side plots with different characters disjointedly accumulated and loosely connected to create this one jumbled up picture. It constantly juggles around the origins of Gru as a villain, the Vicious Six trying to find Gru for stealing the Zodiac Stone, the main Minions trying to rescue Gru and learn Kung Fu, Gru forming a bond with one of his idols while Knuckles, and the new Minion, Otto, going out to retrieve the stone. It's such a weird case where the story has an issue of quantity over quality. There's just so many plot lines happening at once, yet none of them can achieve the impact that they fully want to make to the audience. It's kind of like it's so conflicted with being a Minion sequel or a Despicable Me prequel that it often flip-flops to one or the other instead of having them seamlessly blend together. And the worst thing about it is that if they could focus on expanding a few of them instead of carrying them all in chunks, the writing could have had the ability to tell an effective story. I could see some potential in some, like the bond of Gru and Wild Knuckles was pretty heartfelt, the origin aspect do provide some fun Easter eggs of the past movies, and the times with the Vicious Six hold some of the feature's best creativity. But with so many plot lines at once, they all have to rush their narrative so that they could all fit in that approximately 80-minute running time.
La papitoirelle. Ah! Oh no! La partida! La bola! Basta el amico! Dove posso stoppare? Ah! Mahieu! La ghetta! Ah! Papagato! Parenti!
However, there is a catch to all this. Yes, the story is quite a mess, but that's actually because the Minions' main goal is not to tell a story. It knows exactly what its audience wants, and what they want is Minion madness. If there is one thing that is fully consistent throughout the picture, it's the manic tone and the fast pacing that offers a huge supply of non-stop comedy and action. I'll give it credit that with this kind of speed and with so much happening, it does keep your attention to what is going on throughout, and can actually make the time go by faster than it feels like. Even if it is shorter than the usual family film, it finishes faster than you'll expect. And then there's the comedy, and this is probably what people come to mainly expect from this. In a way, it feels like the Minions have doubled down on their mischief, where most of the movie is nothing but all sorts of nonsensical gags that they could think of, from slapstick, to stupidity, to cartoon-style wackiness, to a good amount of Minion cheeks. With so many gags delivered at a rapid pace, they come with varying results. It will depend on the person if they enjoy Minion humor or not, but from my viewing, I can't say that this made me laugh all the time, and some jokes do fall flat, but there were some that I did honestly find funny and helped make the experience enjoyable. It may not seem like it, but the movie knows exactly what it's doing. It doesn't care about delivering a story, it wants to give Minion fans what they want. The animation. Some may think it's hard to imagine what visual potential there could be in another Minions movie, but when they brought up the idea of having more supervillains in action and a prominent Chinese theme, that's when it caught my attention, where this tells me that the animators at Illumination have some good materials to play with. As I said before, one of the best things about this movie in terms of creativity is the Vicious Six. In a way, they were the ones who brought back the original spirit of the original Despicable Me, where they feature these grand designs that emphasize their abilities and their own themes as villains, along with giving them these crazy vehicles that matches who they are. And thankfully, they are used to their full potential when they play a significant role in making the action scenes a lot of fun. With the already established fast pace, whenever Gru is in danger from them or when the team are on the hunt, they make the most engaging moments of the film that greatly blends their unique powers and weapons with the Minions' signature comedy. As for the Chinese aspect, it does feel like Illumination wants to pander to the Chinese audience, since they have a huge fan base for the characters and play a large role in how they are the cultural phenomenon that we know them today. However, I will give it that this is another great part of the animation, where it's what gives them some of their slapstick material with the kung fu training, along with visually parodying classic kung fu films with the montages. Also, this, along with the 1970s setting, gives a good excuse to have a strong and vibrant color palette to make this be vibrantly colorful and pleasing to look at throughout. But what could possibly be the highlight of the picture is the climax of the Vicious Six and the Minions. It's technically spoiler territory, I know, but to be fair, the trailer spoiled the crap out of the feature that it's pretty much an open secret by now. Anyways, regardless of how I feel about the feature as a whole, I'll admit that the climax was a lot of fun. It plays a lot with textures of their new transformed look and effects with the Zodiac Stone, the fast pace and the size of the evil team adds to the intensity, and the animators made the most out of the mixture of the animals and the characters that they were before. But as much as there are several animation moments that are great, that's where my praise has to stop. As for everything else in the picture, I'd have to say it's pretty much by Illumination standards. It's not necessarily bad animation, it's rendered very well, and the character animation has a nice flow to their movements, rather it be subtly human or comically cartoony with the Minions, but it feels like they're just repeating with what they've already done in the past Despicable Me films. Sure, consistency is one thing, but when we're technically at movie number 5 with this franchise, this repetitiveness in the style is starting to get old where there's not a lot of significant variety to them. And even with the good stuff that I've mentioned, with the disorganized script that it has, it kind of makes me wish that there can be more focus so that they can offer more of those exciting components. The Minions won't surprise you with anything stylistically new, but when the animation gets good, it can make the watch a fun time. The characters. Yes, the beloved supervillain is back in mini form with his army of yellow goofy Twinkies, along with a whole new batch of bad guys. Who are the Vicious Six? How was Gru when he was young? Honestly, even though I saw the film, I wish I could tell you because it doesn't really do a lot with them as characters. Because of the story being all over the place with its heavy load of plot lines, the film doesn't have time to define their personalities, and they're just stuck with their one trait that they have to carry for their scenes. Like I said before, the movie prioritizes the comedy and the action, and at the very least, they do serve their purpose on that front. In this case, even if the writing on them is poor, as long as they can make those aspects entertaining and funny, then that's how they'll ultimately win audiences over. The most positive that I could be with them outside of that is that Steve Carell still sounds like he's enthusiastic and enjoying his performance as Gru, and Taraji P. Henson did great by being feisty and commanding as the Vicious Six's new leader, Bell Bottom.
You seriously think a puny little child can be a villain?
Yes, I am pretty despicable. You don't want to cross me?
There are other notable actors here that do supply their own enjoyable moments, but the amount of dialogue that they're given is so little that they could barely stand out. When it comes to the characters themselves, there's not a lot to describe. You got the main minion trio with Kevin, the straight man, Stuart, the egomaniac, and Bob, the innocent child, as they all get kung fu training from their new teacher, Master Chow.
Teach-nous kung fu pour smoochy smoochy?
Along with them is a new minion named Otto, the one who is not as bright as others, but even with his devotion to Gru, it's tough to make him stop talking. Speaking of which, this movie's Gru is the almost 12-year-old that aspires to be a supervillain, and we already see the first steps of his villainy with the hiring of the minions and his first interactions with Dr. Nefario. As cool as it would be to see more of that, due to the film's uncertainty with what it wants to be, Gru ends up being the new kid starting his journey to mastering his craft, even finding a mentor with one of his idols while Knuckles. I'll give the feature that he is an interesting character who was betrayed by the team that he founded and wants to seek revenge. But later, he forms a friendship with Gru that adds a nice touching moment to the picture. It's just too bad that there wasn't more of this to take advantage of giving the picture a good amount of heart alongside the comedy. As for the Vicious Six themselves, consisting of Bell Bottom, Jean-Claude, Nunchucks, Vengeance, and Stronghold, they really are more about what they do more so than who they are. As characters, they just fill the role of the generic antagonist that wants to get the Zodiac Stone to become the greatest villains in the world.
Evil is for adults who steal powerful ancient stones and wreak havoc.
Like with the story, as comedy takes the highest priority here, the quality of the characters doesn't matter much. They're mainly meant to supply the comedy and the action, and while not actually detestable to the point that I hate them, and some do succeed at their job where it helps add a little charm to them, their roles do come off as generic. Was this movie necessary? Did we honestly need another Minions movie that also acts as a Despicable Me prequel? In my opinion, no. But considering how this was released in the same year where we've had some terrible animated sequels to franchises that have way past their prime like Ice Age 6 or Hotel Transylvania 4, it could have been much, much worse. Minions: The Rise of Gru is exactly what you'd expect. Not really a movie that tells a story with interesting characters, but rather around 80 minutes worth of hyperactive comedy and supervillain action. I wouldn't count this among the best Despicable Me films, let alone among Illumination's library, for its dysfunctional writing that caused an unfocused story and generically flat characters, but it did achieve what it wanted to accomplish. Some performances are enjoyable, the animation can be fun, the action is creative and engaging, and the comedy can be funny. This movie is unapologetically a kids' film, where its target audience are primarily and most importantly, kids. And they are the ones that will enjoy this picture the most. Have them watch this and they will have a blast indulging in the Minions silliness. As for everyone else, this will not change your mind about the Minions. In fact, it will further justify how you feel about them. If you love the Despicable Me films and the Minions, you'll have a good time with The Rise of Gru. If you're not a fan and hate the yellow guys, you're gonna have a real hard time sitting through this one. But regardless of how you feel, a real good time for everyone is when you subscribe to this channel for more reviews and crazy videos so that you could feel like you rose higher than Gru. As much as I've personally enjoyed these films, I think it's time we close the book on Despicable Me. It had a real good run, so let's not overdo it and stop before it burns itself out. Oh god, they're gonna run this thing to the ground, are they?